Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Tool for Tuesday session, where I'll be walking through how to create custom line types in Civil 3D, or essentially any other AutoCAD-based application. The content from today's recording comes from my Autodesk University session, which I did in late 2020, and I'm doing this because I get a lot of questions from customers about custom line types, and I thought it would be helpful to showcase it here on one of these sessions. So I hope it helps. Now, when it comes to creating content, I'm going to be focusing specifically today on creating custom line types, those including custom segments, embedded text, or embedded symbology. Now, why did I choose this topic? Well, while Civil 3D ships with a lot of default content, it may not always include everything you need to meet your requirements or match a particular standard right out of the box. Additionally, once that content is created, we also need to look at ways to take the next step to help make that content more portable. For example, have you ever opened a drawing or a model file only to get the missing SHX error? Me too. And it's never fun, especially if it's your client who's seeing it when they're looking at your files. So let's begin. So when it comes to creating custom line types in Civil 3D, I'll begin by physically drawing the line types that I would like to create. And what I do in the drawing that I have right now is an example of that. I'll start by using a line type that's already in Civil 3D, a dash line, hidden line, just something that I can use for reference with a line type scale of 1. And then from there, I'll begin to draw representative line types for the ones that I'd like to create. In this case, I've got one that's just dashes. In this case, I've got some embedded text. And in this case, I've got a couple examples of adding shapes. So once I've done this, the way that I'll build the line types is through a tool in the Express Tools ribbon. Down underneath Tools, there's a nice option here that's called Make Line Type. The great part about this tool is, I'm sure most folks are aware that line types are embedded in a .lin file. We could obviously create code in that file, but building it through geometry, this tool will write that code for us. So I'm going to say Make Line Type. It's then going to ask us for a folder and a name for the file that we'd like to create. Notice, as I said, it's an LIN file. So the name of my drawing is AU line types. I'm going to call this 1, so AU line types 1.lin. We'll say save. It's going to ask us at the bottom to enter a line type name. I'm going to call this, we'll call this AU, and I'll say skip dash. Description, I could put in something, more detail, something like that. In this case, I'm going to say boundaries, something indicative of what I'm going to use the line type for. And then starting point for line definition, this is where it starts. And the key is the ending point is not what you would expect the end here, but it's a point that it'll start repeating. So I'm going to select at this point, and then it's going to say select the objects that make up the line type. I'm going to window those objects. And when I right click, it writes off that information to the LIN file, automatically loads the line type, and then if I select a continuous line here, we'll just select a new line type. We'll say skip dash, and we see that it's automatically created a new line type for us. Okay, let's do the same thing with text, the same process. Make line type. I can't use the same line file that I did before, or it's going to attempt to overwrite it, so we'll create a second one here. We'll say save. Line type name, we'll call this one AU text, and I can give it a description. I'll just put in a description for right now. Like I said, we usually put in something that's going to be indicative of what we'll use it for. For right now, we're just going through the process of creating some custom ones. Starting point will start here. Ending point will end here. And the objects I'm going to select is this text, and I'm going to come back to this in just a second, and this line segment. So we'll grab both of those. Now once that's done, it's built the line type and it's loaded it, so we know that it's going to work. I'll come over here, we'll look at the line type. Here's AU text. We select that, and there is our new line type that has a text in the line. The one thing that I will point out is when it comes to the text itself, the style that I'm using right now is standard. It's something that's default in the file. But if I type in style, I want to make sure that the style that I use for the text has got a height set to 0. If I set the height to 0, then it won't be fixed. And then if I adjust my line type scale, the text will get bigger or smaller with the setting. If it's a fixed height, then it won't. So that's a caveat. If we're going to use text in lines, I want to make sure the text style has got a height of 0. Next thing I want to do is let's look at embedding some shapes within our line type definitions. For that, we're going to turn this geometry that right now is just individual segments, we're going to turn that into what's called a shape. There's a tool for that as well. So we'll come down underneath the Express Tools and then the Tools area for Make Shape. It's going to ask us where we're going to save it. I'll put it in the same folder, and in this case we'll call this AU, and I'll call it Corp, because this is a symbol that I use for corporate limits around a municipality or a city or something like that. It's going to ask us to enter the name for the shape. I'm just going to call this Corp. For corporate limits, I can, though I don't give a description this time, resolution's 128. That gets down into the amount of code that it's going to write to generate those particular objects. I usually leave that at the default. Specify insertion base point. We're going to say the midpoint of right here, and then the objects that will make up that shape will be these 3. All right, we see at the bottom it's been successfully created, and to use the shape command to physically place it in the drawing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to erase this geometry, and we're going to replace it with the shape. To do that, I'm going to type in the command shape. It says enter shape name or question mark. We called it Corp, so I'll type that in. And the insertion point to place that, I'm going to say the midpoint between 2 points, the midpoint between here and here. The scale, the default is 1. That's what I'm going to use. I don't need to scale it. I don't need a rotation angle. And now my custom line type definition has a shape file that's been inserted within it. From there, we'll use the same process we did before. We'll say make line type. This one will be our third one. We'll say save. Actually, I called it 32, but that's all right for now. Line type name, we'll say AU Corp. I can give it a description, corporate limits, starting point is the end of here, ending point is the end of there. We'll go ahead and select those objects. It's created. Let's take a quick look at that. Our objects here for AU Corp. That's been assigned, and if we start moving it around, we can see that we do in fact have a custom line type. The last one I'm going to use here, just to give some indication, we can get fairly complex with this. These are individual segments. It's not a block or anything like that. We'll go through the same process. This one will say the instead of AU Corp, this file we'll put it as AU shape, or I'm sorry, AU logo will be the new shape file we'll make for that. Name of shape, we'll call it logo. Resolution 128 is good. Base point, I don't have a midpoint to grab this time, so I'm going to say midpoint between 2 points to compute where I'd like the insertion. And then select objects will be these objects that make that up. It's been created. We'll go ahead and erase the original geometry here. We'll once again use the command shape. Now what's cool about this, if you don't remember the name, this question mark's kind of nice down here. I can just click on the question mark. I'll hit enter for asterisk, and it'll show me all the shapes that have already been loaded. You see here's the Corp, or the shapes that have been created. Here's AU Corp, and here's AU logo. In that file is where the logo is. So we're going to say shape. We want to use logo. You know, so in the instance if you create a bunch of these and you forget what you typed in, or just looking for a reference of what's here, we can do that. Insertion point, midpoint between 2 points, here and here. Scale of 1, we'll accept the default by right-clicking. Rotation angle 0, we'll right-click, and then we'll make the last line type. So we'll make line type. This will be AU4. And we'll say save. Line type name, this is going to be AU logo. Line type description, we'll say Autodesk university, starting point, the end of here, the point that it repeats, the ending point is going to be here, and the objects that make it up are these. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and select. We'll come back and look at our particular line type, and we see AU logo, and it functions as we would expect in our line type. So the logo is going to be drawn in the direction that the arc or the polyline was created. All right. So very easy to create these. I'm sure you can see that in a matter of a handful of minutes you can make a lot. Why would we want these? Well, we might be creating other geometry or other custom lines to maybe show us a direction of flow on utility, different types of utility designations for like telephone, overhead electric, cable TV. We might want symbology to designate other objects within our file or other features. Very easy to take and create using these tools. Now, once these are created, we want to make sure that they're more portable for us to use. And if we come out and look at the file, let's take a look at what we've created. I'm going to rename this one. Hopefully it'll let me because it's being used, and it does. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have our shape files that were created. We see some compiled SHXs. I'd like to turn all of these into a single line type file and a single shape file, so that if I need to distribute my drawings to somebody else, I don't have to worry about giving them everything that may be here. Specifically, a whole bunch of shape files if I've created a number of different shapes or objects within my lines. So the way that we'll do that, I'm going to grab the 4 line types here. We're going to right click. I'm going to open those up on the screen so we can see there's number 1. We can see here's number 2. Here's number 3, and here's number 4. Okay, so all the different lines that we created. Each one, like I said, this would be the code that we would have to take and write. We don't necessarily worry about the actual code itself. There's one piece that we're going to change. We'll change that in a minute. But what I need to do is consolidate all of these into a single file. So what we'll do is we'll come into the bottom one here. I'm going to say Control A is going to grab everything. Control C to copy. We'll come into the first file here and we'll paste it. We'll close out of that one. We'll come into this one. Control A, Control C. Come up to the top. We'll paste that one. We'll close out of this guy. We'll come into the next one. Control A, Control C. And we'll come up here and we'll paste that one. All right, I'm then going to give this a new name because it's the consolidated one. I don't want to overwrite maybe my individual one. So we'll set this to all files. And I'm just going to call this, it's going to be AU master. And we'll save it. So there's my saved AU master file for my line work. Now let's go ahead and close this. I need to do the same thing with my shapes. Now you notice every time I used or created a shape, it automatically compiled that into an SHX. All right, so it wrote the code and it compiled it. So if I need to bring all these together, I need to compile all of them in one file. So we'll do the first thing is take the original shape files and we'll merge those into a single file like what we just did. So we'll go ahead and open those on the screen. There's the one for the corporate limits and the one for the logo. So I'm going to come into the one for the logo here. We'll say Control A to grab everything, Control C. I'm going to click inside this one and we'll paste. The only thing that I need to do is we see it begins with an *1. I'm going to change this to *2 because that's the second shape, and then *3, *4. It's the only thing we need to change. The other thing we need to do is we need to come to the end of the line and we need to make sure that we've got an enter at the end because the code expects an enter at the last line. So let's go ahead and save this. So we'll say save as. This is going to be AU. Actually, we'll go to, we'll say all files, and this is going to be AU master, and this will be .shp, and we'll save that. Okay, so if we come back and we take a look in our folder now, let's refresh. We see here is AU master shape. Now these were turned into compiled files. I need to compile this one into a single one now. The way that we'll compile it is there's a command within Civil 3D that we can use. It's called compile. So we'll type in the command compile. It's going to ask us to select the shape or the font file we'd like to compile. So I'm going to grab AU master. We'll say OK. It says compilation successful. There's the output file for SHX. We come out and look. Here's our compiled file. So now, if we wanted to make this portable, I've got one line type file and I've got one SHX file that I can distribute, or if you've ever used eTransmit before and it gives you a listing of what's required, I don't need SHX, SHX, SHX. Now, anybody that's familiar with this, they may be looking at it and say, "Oh, Jerry, you forgot one step." And that's correct, I did. Now that we created this file is still pointing at the SHXs that we created previously. I need to point to the new one. So let's come back into our master line type. I'm going to double click to open that up. And here is the one for the logo. It was looking at C:AU 2020 logo. This is now going to be replaced with AU master. And then we're going to come down corporate limits. We see that that was also looking at an external file. And this is why when it creates that, if it's hard-coded, guess what? The person on the other end, they're going to start getting the missing SHX file when you go to distribute these. So we'll do this. We'll say this is also AU master. I don't need to change it for the other ones because they didn't have symbols. So now my line type file is automatically pointing at my custom shape. The compiled version, we'll go ahead and save this. And then if we want this to be totally portable, what we're going to do is we're going to come back into Civil here. We're going to say options. One of the things that I do is the support file search path. You come down, you notice at the very bottom, I create a folder that I put all of my custom things in. That way it's automatically going to search there. I don't necessarily bury it in with the things that are installed by default. So I would put that AutoCAD or that AU master SHX and the AU master LIN file in a custom folder here. So we'd add a folder. We can just do that right now. We'll say browse. We'll use the AU 2020 folder, and then it would automatically find those line types. Okay? Let's test that quickly. Brand new file. We'll go ahead and draw a line on the screen here. I'm going to have to set my LT scale to be something a little bit larger. We'll say 40 because that's the scale that I'm working with down here. And then I'm going to type in the command line type. We'll say load. File is my AU master. There's all my line types. We'll select all of those. We'll say OK. All of those have been loaded. No errors, no anything like that. And if we select, come over here on the side and we look at line types, there's the corporate limits, the logo, the skip dash, and the text. Okay, so I distribute certainly the SHX file, maybe the LIN file becomes very portable, and I'm able to work with that very easily. Okay, last thing I want to show you. You may say, Jerry, where were you 10 years ago when I created a whole bunch of these things? I don't necessarily have the shapes anymore. I have all the SHXs. Is there any way to compile SHXs together to make a singular file? The short answer to that is no. But I can decompile SHX files back to shape and then recompile them in a master. Okay, how will I do that? Well, I'm going to take my master SHX file. Let's copy that. I'm going to paste it into a folder here I've got called Decompile. That's the one, let's say I want to decompile back into a shape. And maybe I'm going to decompile multiple ones so that I can put them all into a single file and recompile it again. How am I going to decompile that? Well, I'm going to open up Windows Explorer, and there happens to be, I believe it's the only external Express tool. It's called Dump SHX. If you drill down into your machine under Program Files, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2021, Express, and then we come down to the this external file here, dump.shx.exe. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to come back to my decompile folder, and I'm going to paste it. And then let me show you how we're going to use that. It's an old command. It's really old command. So it's going to require that we run it in the command line version, or actually back to the DOS days. So we're going to say cmd for command. And then what we're going to do is, I know what folder this is in, so using an old DOS command here, it's really easy. I'm going to say cd for change directory, and then I'm going to type in where it's at. It's at c:2020/decompile. And if I type in dir for directory and hit enter, I see there are the same two files that I'm seeing here. Well, the syntax for the command is pretty easy. It's dump shx, then I'm going to put in a space, I'm going to put in a -o for an output file, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it the output file name. I'm just going to call it au.shape, what I want to name the output file, and then I'm going to give it the name of the input file. We'll say au master.shx, and when I hit enter, it's automatically decompiled it. When you see release 10 output file and release 11 format, that's actually, I think, early 90s, late 80s type of command. This is the vintage of what we're working with. But if it works, we can keep using it. Here's the decompiled version, au.shape. If I double click on that, we see that it's gone through and it's pulled that information back out of that SHX file. I could continue to add more information to this, recompile it like we just did, and continue to build on the standards that I've been working with. So hopefully this was helpful, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. See ya.